You're listening to the League Bound Podcast.
Sheldon's coming again. Oh, mercy.
Your source for weekly coverage on the future stars of the NBA.
Is it the Jenkins for the championship?
I'm your co-host, Jake Schrantz.
And I'm your co-host, Branden Blue.
With production for the podcast coming from Broderick Wilken.
With the first pick in the NBA draft.
Hello, and welcome back to the 10th, yes, you heard it, the 10th episode of the League Bound Podcast, where we break down prospects and some of the best players in college basketball, while also talking about breaking news in the college basketball world. I'm your co-host, Branden Blue, here with my co-host, Jake. Jake, how are you today?
Man, I am doing fantastic. I'm really excited for this episode. Brody, we have a special guest here today, man.
We do. And as the college basketball season comes to an end here, as it's all wrapped up, we'd like to introduce you to the man behind all of our transition audios, Chife Jaeger, here in the studio as we speak. How you doing, Chife?
Hey, y'all. How's it going? I'm very excited to be here today for the full episode. I made a little appearance last time, but I'm here for the whole time now.
Some trivia, and you will be participating in trivia again this podcast.
And he will lose.
I'm going 2 for 2.
Stop it. Get out
We'll
of here.
We'll see. He did sweep them. And so yeah, as we look here, the podcast is going to look a little different. No more college basketball season, but we will have plenty of new and exciting content for you guys as every episode comes out. So why don't we kick off today's episode with a little bit of Final Four negativity.
Negativity.
Okay, so first off, shout out my KU Jayhawks, man. First off, for negativity, we got Christian Braun in the championship game after a tough little and one bucket. Looked at a fan and yelled a word I cannot say. But I got to say, that was very fiery to see, especially coming in the championship game. That's the type of passion and energy that you love to see from your players. And the fact that we were down so much at that point and we came back and ended up winning made that feel so much better. I ain't gonna lie, I was sitting there yelling with him, but funny moment.
And as a Kansas Jayhawk fan, you're obviously a little biased for this, well, very biased for this team. And how does it feel as a sports fan, being fans of many teams that maybe have struggled to make it all the way? How does it feel to finally be on the top?
Well, before I answer your question, I have some people I would like to thank. Round of applause to Ochai Agbaji. Round of applause to Christian Braun. And lastly, round of applause to David McCormick.
You gonna do Bill Self like that?
I was getting there. Round of applause to Bill Self, everybody out in Lawrence who's going crazy, everybody who helped KU get to this point. That was such an immaculate feeling. I don't want to drag too long here, but that was a team that I've really been supporting for most of my life, more than the Chiefs, more than the Royals. And to see them finally actually win a championship and really remember the whole journey, the process, you know, some of you might know the story about the 2020 season, how we were number one, finished with 16 straight wins, but then COVID happened. And now to see some of that same young core come back and get that championship that ran away from them, it's such a satisfying feeling. I was sitting there. There were some tears running down my eyes. I can't lie. I was soft, but for a good cause.
Yeah, and me watching along with, Branden that night, I can go unbiased here and say Christian Braun is definitely someone who has shot up my draft board. He's a super high floor player. He does pretty much everything well. Great job, Christian Braun.
I saw Draft Express moved him up to the first round today, so it seems you're not the only one who thinks he's a first rounder. But moving on to some more negativity, I feel like we need to acknowledge that UNC Duke game just because it was a lot of high energy. There wasn't really any big fights, but it was a gritty, physical game. You could tell both teams wanted it. And I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of shocked UNC managed to pull this off the way they did. shout out to Hubert Davis also in his first season, making it to the NCAA championship game, especially after a kind of below average season, honestly. Well, I don't want to say below average, but not something that UNC would have expected in a championship season. But
yeah, and with that Duke and North Carolina game in the Final Four, Caleb Love just went off again, made a clutch 3 at the end and some late free throws, and just absolutely cold-blooded sent Coach K home sad. That was crazy.
Yeah, Caleb Love, he was somebody who people thought could have been a draft pick last year, kind of had a bad season. I'm not going to sugarcoat. But this run definitely probably has helped his draft stock. I don't know if he's going to end up in like the first round, but maybe
he will definitely get drafted after this March Madness run, no matter what.
And like one thing I saw, me and Jake talked about this before, but this is something I've kind of talked about with Jaden Ivey a little bit. It looked like, although his shot selection is a lot more questionable than Jaden Ivey's, I would say, there were times where he was really creating so much space on his shot, and like I feel like I know Jake said this too. Like when he gets good enough to where he can just make the shot, I think he could potentially be a problem in the NBA. But that's the question: if he gets it down and if he can hone these abilities. That 28-point game versus Duke and that 30-point game versus UCLA made him look like a completely different player. So he's someone I would like to see do well in the league.
Yeah, that's a concept we've seen a lot in the past. Like, are you Steph Curry or are you Marcus Howard? Are you Giannis Antetokounmpo or Thon Maker? Like, is he going to be Ja Morant or is he going to be Caleb Love? We'll have to see in the future.
Thon Maker is a name I have not heard in a while. As a
former Bucks draft pick, right?
Former Bucks legend Thon Maker. He's up there with Tony Snell.
I wonder what he's up to now.
Probably being retired.
Oh. Okay. Now, I do want to talk about this championship game. I know I said I was done, but I'm not done. I lied. So I just want to talk about how KU, that first half, we looked like a completely different team. We were getting, that first half, we just allowed so many easy shots. But that second half, we really honed in on defense. We came out, we set the tone. And somebody who I think is not getting enough love for his performance is David McCormick. Strictly because, I'm not going to lie, even I, coming into the matchup, I was scared how he was going to match up against Armando Bacot. And he kind of narrowed that gap. And honestly, Bacot kind of showed why he's not really a first-round draft pick. Don't get me wrong, he was good defensively, but he shot 3 for 13, missed a lot of what I would say should be easy baskets for a first-round pick. But just our whole defense that second half was something that was really honestly satisfying to watch. We were rotating quickly. There were open shots in the corners, but we would cut people off before they could even think about getting the shot off or think about driving downhill. I think we guarded Caleb Love really well, although some of it may have been him just shooting himself in the foot. Again, round of applause, guys. Really, round of applause.
Yeah, and just another quick note on Bacot. I believe he did come into this game, or some point in this game was playing with a little bit of an injury, but you know what they say, if you're on the court, you got to perform, and if you're going to go out there and play injured and kind of negatively impact the game, you got to get out of the game.
I will give him his props. He battled hard. He was tough all tournament.
Coach K even said he was his player of the year.
Yeah. He had 2 games where he had 20 points in this NCAA tournament against Duke as well. So he left it all out there. He's a player I've watched since his freshman year at North Carolina. So I'm happy to see him even get this far. I don't know if he's going to come back to UNC, but he's somebody I'm truly am rooting for. So.
It was really tough to see Bacot go out at the end of the game with his ankle injury. You just never want to see.
Yeah.
At a game at that level, so close, one of the star players have to leave the game. He was in a lot of pain, man.
Yeah,
it got a lot of respect for him for fighting through that.
There were 2 games in a row where, because that Duke game he got injured too, but he came back out and fought. So he's tougher than me. I ain't gonna lie. But.
And I think a big part of it is not just physical pain, but also a mental pain of the risk of, like, if this injury gets aggravated even worse, or, as it took him off the court many times, like, could that be the end of his career at UNC?
Well, also a lot of it comes to like just moves that are natural or habits for him. Probably at that point we're just like, oh man, that really hurt. Like takes your mind off the game.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The Weekly Takes.
Now moving on to our way too early predictions for the 2023 season. Here we're just going to talk about some teams we can see doing well and some of the top recruits in next year's draft class that will probably end up getting drafted as well. For me, first up, I want to talk about Arkansas. I know I'm a little woo pig coat rider on the pod. I know, I ain't gonna lie. But when you look at the recruiting class that they have, let me pull it up. They have 3 top 20 players, including Nick Smith, who honestly could potentially end up being a number 1 pick, especially since he'll probably have more exposure than our other top two projected picks. He's a 6'4" guard, really highly skilled and honestly just an explosive athlete from the film that I watched of him. Then next you have Anthony Black, who's recently committed. He's a really tall point guard at 6'7", and he can shoot the ball pretty well for, a tall point guard. You also have Jordan Walsh, who's just an explosive forward. And I think that trio by itself is going to be deadly. And then when you add possibly the return of Jalen Williams, who was their key big man that whole season, and Stanley Amude, another solid defensive player who can shoot the ball a little bit, I think that Arkansas might be my favorite to win it.
And I think kind of a really fun part about this team is that they have a big experience in terms of massive upsets. Because last season, their team they beat number 1 Auburn. That was probably one of the most massive upsets the entire season had seen. They took down multiple. Who did they take down in the playoffs? Or not playoffs, March Madness.
They took down Gonzaga. I think that was like the main.
Yeah, but they took down Gonzaga, who a lot of people had
the number
favored.
1 seed.
A
Yeah.
lot of people had favored as well too.
I would like to say, I think even mid-season after they beat Auburn, I was saying they could go deep again, and they did. So,
and one last comment, but I just would like to say that a team that knows how to find ways to win games normally knows how to find ways to win games come March Madness. So I also really agree with you that they stand a really good chance.
Oh, I realized I forgot one player, but also Devo Davis, who will be a junior next year. He's been really big, honestly, since his freshman year last year when they had that run. So I think him coming back and having a little bit more of a leading role next year will be really important for them as well.
Yeah, and Arkansas is not going to be my team I talk about here for my way too early, but I do have to give a little bit of credit to Branden because we saw a lot of those home games in the SEC like conference play. Arkansas was crazy for those big-time ranked matchups. Like when they beat Auburn at home, that was one of the loudest crowds we'd seen in a minute. And if they have this top recruiting class coming in, Jordan Walsh can put a man in the rim like it's nothing. So him and possibly Jalen Williams making those big-time dunks, that is going to be crazy.
I think it'll be fun watching those players as they build their own draft stock for the next season as well, and we'll really have fun talking about them next year.
Next up, this was the team with the top recruiting class, according to 24/7 Sports, is Duke. They have, I believe, 3 of the top 5 players in this year's recruiting class. They have Derek Lively, Dariq Whitehead, and Kyle Filipowski. I'm not really sure who all Duke is going to get to return just because right now I feel like a lot of it is up in the air. But that alongside, I feel like, they have 2 more recruits in Mark Mitchell and Jaden Shutt. That combined with Jeremy Roach returning, I feel like they aren't my favorite to win, but I could definitely see them, just being a really fun team to watch. ESPN's probably going to show their best games like every week. So I think they'll be a fun team to watch, and I'm hoping to.
Yeah, and this is obviously going to be unless he pulls a Tom Brady, This is going to be the first, big-time Duke team that doesn't have Coach K. So that's going to be must-see TV pretty much every single game. And then moving on for me is a team that is pretty conditional to be, at the top, because I'm going to talk about Kentucky. Obviously, the biggest reason has got to be Shaedon Sharpe. If he comes to Lexington next season, like we on the podcast think he will, even though a lot of other people think he's going to go to the draft, their ceiling changes drastically next season. If Sharpe comes there, he raises their ceiling. If he goes to the draft in June, obviously they drop down. But if he goes to Kentucky for technically his freshman season, they would add Chris Livingston, who on ESPN is the 12th ranked college recruit, on the wing with him. He's a small forward. And there's not going to be a lot of teams in the SEC that can compete with two really highly ranked wings like that are so athletic, so strong for such a young age. And I think that just overall, we're going to see a really competitive SEC again, just like we saw this year, and we had a blast watching it this year.
Yeah, back to your point about Shaedon Sharpe. He's probably the player in this. I know, like you said, a lot of draft classes don't have him in it for some reason, but he's probably the player in this class I'm most excited to watch. I think after they lost to St. Peter's, they showed him on the bench, and he looked a little heated. Obviously he didn't play, but he could use that as some fuel to just have an absolutely crazy season this year. And I'm excited to see him lead this Kentucky team. And like you said, Chris Livingston and all those other guys who are probably going to end up in the NBA.
And I kind of want to add on to the Shaedon Sharpe aspect because we talk a lot about how he does have that chance of just staying. And how do you guys think his draft stock would be affected by him deciding to go for another year? Do you think it'll do better or just about the same?
I think if he deep down really wanted to be like the number one pick, because some guys have that where in their head they come in, they're like, I want to be the number one pick in the draft. He should definitely stay not even another year. He should just play his freshman year because he has the talent to be the number one pick next year. And if he goes out and balls out for Kentucky, leads them far in the tournament and has a good season, he definitely has the potential to be that number one guy in the 2023 class.
I mean, have you seen that dude's high school highlights? Like, man.
Insane.
Menace.
Prospect Breakdown.
And now it is time for our prospect breakdown. Johnny Davis, it is time to break you down.
The applause is taking a big effect in this podcast, huh?
Yeah, it might be my thing. I ain't gonna lie. But moving into our physicals for Johnny Davis. 6'5", 194 pounds, a sophomore, out of La Crosse. Am I saying that right, Chife? La Crosse?
Yes, like the sport.
Okay, yeah. La Crosse, Wisconsin, averaging 19.7 points, 8.2 rebounds, and 2.1 assists.
And for those who don't know, Chife over here is a Wisconsin native. It's a big reason we wanted him on the podcast, talk a little bit about Johnny Davis, as he does have quite a bit of knowledge over that Wisconsin team and Wisconsin in general.
Yeah, I mean, Davis and the Badgers this year, I mean, I never really understood a whole lot of the hype about him. Everybody was hyping him up as a whole National Player of the Year candidate. I never really thought he would win that at all. I mean, I saw Frank play when I was growing up in Madison. He wasn't Frank. He wasn't Frank.
He was no Frank.
The hype train that Frank had was bar none the biggest I've ever seen in my entire life. He was a god in Madison, basically.
But he was valid, though. I mean, Johnny Davis, he has a lot of excitement. I mean, the experts here will get into why
he wasn't as flamboyant as Frank was. He was very open about his personality. He was very goofy, and I don't think Johnny Davis was as open to the public as Frank was.
He just got on the court, balled, ate, slept, eat, slept. That was it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes that's a part of a player that is something you would want out of someone, is just a person who sets their head forward and just grinds. But nevertheless, let's hear that analysis, Jake. What do you think about him?
Yeah, my biggest thing with Johnny Davis is I think he's maybe the most confident offensive player in this entire draft class. We saw when his game was going this season, like we saw against Purdue on the road, that was one of the most fun games to watch. He just is not afraid to keep getting his shots up when, he's making shot after shot at the beginning of a game. And I think, honestly, this is an undervalued ability for players coming into the league. We've seen players just this year, like Jordan Poole in the NBA, who have found success in their career by fighting through adversity and offensive struggles. Johnny went through these offensive struggles in in this season, and if he goes through a similar rough stretch in the NBA, I think he has the internal confidence to fight through it, and is not going to be someone who just phases out and gives up. But at many times this season, Johnny was not finding a good way to positively impact the team unless he was putting up shots, especially when those shots were not going down.
Yeah, I mean, he never averaged very high in assists. His season average was 2 assists per game. And I mean, they didn't have bad players. I mean, they had the fifth-year senior, Brad Davison, obviously his brother. They had other good players on the team, but I mean, even when he was shooting poorly, he didn't pass the ball a whole lot.
Can't forget about Chucky either.
Yeah. Oh, Chucky Hepburn. I love Chucky Hepburn.
Good player.
Omaha native.
And he's coming back next season, so...
Oh, yeah.
He's probably going to be their lead guard next year.
And pick potential? Draft pick potential?
Possibly.
If he develops right, I think he can. I think if he really puts in the work, I think he could definitely do it. But that's all something we got to wait and see. I still have mixed feelings about Greg Gard as head coach.
Brandon, what you think about Johnny?
Johnny, I'm gonna be honest. Johnny a funny guy. We got a love-hate relationship. I ain't gonna lie. He was somebody. I remember that Nebraska game. I was so excited to go see him play, and I was like, "Dang, Johnny, you could have showed out a little more." But to really get into my breakdown, I do see good at times in Johnny, but then other times, I just see. I don't even know the word to describe it. Just,
almost like, what are you doing out there?
I don't even want to.
Not even that.
I don't even want to say that. It's just like, it just feels like Wisconsin doesn't even need him at times. I don't know, but
ghastly. Maybe,
yeah, that might be the right word.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but you brought up Nebraska, and when they came down to Pinnacle Bank, it was almost like he wasn't even on the court. Like, he just never saw the ball. He was basically just an off-ball rotation around the court as Chucky Hepburn and Brad Davison just shot the lights out that night, but he really had no factor.
The main thing I remember is he tried to catch like 2 or 3 lobs, they were all like bad passes, or he just didn't catch them. But to kind of talk about Johnny Davis in a good light, he's a very good athlete, I must say. He's quite athletic, probably one of the most athletic players in this draft class, or in this top 10 at least. He's got a quick first step, which is very useful at the next level. Strong, finishes through contact, which I think is probably the best part about his game. And he does have a lot of good post moves for his a guard of his size. That was something I noticed when I was watching, film of him. And he's good at taking advantage of smaller guards. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jalen Brunson. That's not my comparison, but Jalen Brunson, we see him do that a lot in the NBA because he's not necessarily a tall guard, but he's a stronger guard, and he is willing to shoot the mid-range jumper and the 3-point shot. I low-key think he's a better mid-range jump shooter than he is a 3-point shooter, but that might just be me. But now, kind of getting into his weaknesses, he doesn't really look like the most fluid ball handler at times, and I think that kind of leads into when he tries to create a lot of his own shots. Sometimes he does it and like he'll hit the shot, but I feel like he takes a lot of dribbles where it's like they're not as effective as somebody like Jaden Ivey's getting, or like Ty and maybe even or definitely Kennedy Chandler both are. And on top of that, I think that he's shown that he's a very streaky shooter, and I think I've noticed his form is kind of like the way he shoots the ball. Obviously, that's something that can be fixed, but he just doesn't strike me as someone who I can see playing the same way that he does in the NBA, where he's like coming off a lot of screens and just shooting a lot of shots. I feel like he's somebody who's going to be a little bit more slasher reliant. And I feel like in the NBA, when that's kind of your main thing, it's not like you're not going to have as much success as you probably should. I'm definitely not saying Johnny Davis is going to be a bust, because I doubt that really anybody in this draft class is going to be a bust. I just think, is he going to reach the expectation that everybody thinks he will? That I don't know.
And I don't know why this just popped into my head, like literally live right now as we're recording. But I was trying to think of the best person to compare Johnny Davis to recently. And for some reason, like in a draft class, James Bouknight popped into my head. And I'm looking at the comparison on Tankathon. If you look at the stats at home, their per game averages and advanced stats are almost exactly the same.
James Bouknight. Yeah, he was somebody I thought we were going to see a lot of this year.
I agree with that for the Hornets. And you just look at some of the comparisons. Both of them just under 80% free throw. Both of them around middle to lower 40% field goal percentage in college. Both of them had pretty similar true shooting percentages, just above 50%. So if you liked James Bouknight, I believe last year, you're probably someone who likes Johnny Davis this year. But unfortunately, Bouknight hasn't had too much of an impact for the Hornets so far in his career. Not sure if that's going to be the exact same story for Johnny, but,
I'm pretty sure he's in the G League with the Greensboro Swarm.
He has made some appearances for the Swarm this year. I have seen him on the bench, though, with LaMelo Ball this year, just goofing around, though. But
as somebody who was high on Bouknight, although I didn't really watch too much of him that deeply during the regular season, I'm hopeful that he will have a second season. I'm hopeful that he will have a second season resurgence. That's something we've kind of seen with a lot of rookies. And kind of tying that back to Johnny Davis, I think he's somebody who, like, I love breaking down prospects and all that, but it's just so hard to make judgments about them before they're actually in the NBA. And I think for me, Johnny's just one of those people. It's like, it's hard for me to see him doing well just because he hasn't played an NBA game, whether that be summer league or regular season. And so it's just kind of hard to get an idea of how these teams want to use him. And I think, maybe after he, has 1 or 2 years in the league, he can find a role where, he can be a really effective player. Maybe somehow get to that all-star range. You never know.
One thing I think about Johnny Davis is kind of a little bit slept on is with his amazing athletic ability, I think he has a lot of potential to be a good defender on the perimeter in the NBA. We saw all year. Yeah, we saw all year, how much hustle he puts, whether it's following his shot and throwing it off the back of the backboard, which is a low light, or chasing after loose balls late in the game and getting a forced turnover, which obviously is a highlight. I think that's something that could translate into the NBA and keep him on NBA rosters going forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. That was something I've meant to mention in my strengths. But, going back to your point, you have guys in the league like Bruce Brown Jr., who that is all they do. Bruce Brown Jr. for the Nets, for those of you who don't know. But literally all that man does is just play defense. And Johnny Davis, I think we could see him be somebody who can at least, get minutes on the floor just because of how good he's of a defender he is. I don't think he's somebody like Bruce Brown Jr. who's just going to be limited to only defense, because I do think he's genuinely capable of more than that. But I think Johnny, if he just stays true to his defensive identity, throughout his whole career, I think that'll help him out a lot in the long run.
I kind of want to ask you guys about the fact that he was quite, underutilized at Wisconsin at times, as we have described before. How do you think that's going to translate to the NBA, and how do you think teams are going to use him more, or maybe actually give him designated roles where he does see more use, or is he just going to be kind of like you described, that role-playing defensive player that kind of just off-ball pests, I guess?
Well, that might have been in some of the games where he kind of disappeared or didn't look like he was getting used a lot. But on the season, he had a usage rate of 32.5%, which was even higher than Jaden Ivey at 28.7%. So Johnny Davis, that's honestly maybe a weakness because he's taking that high of a usage rate in college and having games where he struggles. How is he going to carry over into an 82-game season playing against the best players in the NBA?
I guess I did kind of eat my own words there, didn't I?
But I want to add something to that because I know Chife kind of talked about it earlier when, at least I think you did. He said he only averages 2 assists and he's really hasn't shown that he's that strong of a playmaker. That's another underrated attribute that like
definitely
a lot of NBA players have. Like not just point guards, like big centers too and forwards. They have to be able to play make too. But
yeah, that was one thing people said about Giannis in the playoffs last year is when he started passing the ball around, creating assists, people were like, wow, I've never seen Giannis make passes like that before. It's like such a necessary component to your game. And if he's going to have any success in the NBA, that's really something that he has to improve on.
Yeah, because that like when I watch Johnny, it's not like I'm seeing him, you know, like because I feel like they hardly put him in pick and roll actions, and he's like making reads out of it, you know. So that's something I've hoped that he would get better at. And again, maybe you know he finds a system where it's easier for him to make the right plays, but we'll see with Johnny.
So I also want to ask, where do you guys think he'll go? Do you think he'll be and I also want to know, do you think he's a player that could possibly drop, or do you think he's just kind of locked in that, like, I think Tankathon had him at 9?
Well, as we've kind of seen with a lot of these mock drafts, once you kind of get to that, like, I want to say, like, top 8 mark, maybe even 9, everything's just kind of a toss-up. So I could potentially see Johnny, I don't want to say drop out of the lottery, but maybe to the lower part. And, like, he could maybe even end up on, like, a team that's on the better side, maybe. Like the Lakers, I don't know.
If maybe.
Yeah, Lakers, Pelicans, you know, teams that kind of already have established cores or teams that are...
that already have pieces.
Yeah, but just had a bad year, injuries, stuff like that. So,
unfortunately for the Lakers, their first-round pick is going to the Pelicans this year.
Ooh, never mind.
That's tough.
Never mind.
So, you think Pelicans are kind of looking like a good spot for him? If he does go low enough to that spot?
I think it could work out. Although the Pelicans...
They picked up CJ McCollum.
Yeah. So that... But him playing back fiddle to him could be helpful.
Honestly, CJ could be a good player to learn from Johnny Davis because CJ came into the NBA as basically just a shooter out of Lehigh, and playing alongside Dame, he really learned how to be a little bit better of a playmaker, and that's something Johnny Davis really needs to work on. So honestly, the Pelicans, if they're really feeling like taking on a project player, then I don't see anything wrong with them going Johnny Davis, as long as they don't pick him over Benedict Mathurin, because I think that would be the biggest mistake you can do.
Bad.
Branden?
He could also fall to a team like maybe even the Knicks, Hornets. Him on the Hornets, I think, because they're a very fast-paced team.
Yeah, but do the Hornets go draft James Bouknight last year and then draft the basically exact same player and Johnny Davis this year? That'd be insane.
If they did, say, move around Bouknight or something, and he did end up with the Hornets, I feel like that is a system where he would kind of thrive the best, just because they do get out in transition probably more than most teams in the league, I'd say, that aren't like in playoff contention. And, you know, I think he's also a player who, just because he's athletic and, you know, he has that quick speed, that could be a system where he thrives and, you know, where he has more transition opportunities and doesn't have to be in the half court as much.
And so I got one last question for you two before we move on to trivia here. And that is, where do you think he places among the top guards in the draft? Because I think at one point we had him higher than we probably have him now, especially towards the starting of the season. I think we had him like literally right behind Jaden Ivey. But is that a little bit of a faded reality now?
I'd say he's still top 3 or 4 in the draft. Yeah. I'd have Jaden Ivey, Benedict, maybe even Kennedy Chandler over him. That might be a wild, but I'd say he's in that 3 to 4 range.
Oh, I was just gonna say, here's a question: would you take Bryce McGowens or Johnny Davis?
Ooh.
Oh my goodness. That is
I
think both would definitely be projects.
100%. But for me, guards I would take over Johnny Davis, Jaden Ivey, Shaden Sharp if he's there, Benedict Mathurin, Dyson Daniels, Kennedy Chandler, Christian Braun, and Jaden Hardy.
Wow. That's a lot. So, and I could have sworn I heard it, maybe not come directly out of you, but one of you two definitely said that Johnny Davis was like maybe a top 2 or 3 guard, but I think that's kind of well faded, or at least in your opinion over here.
I'm just projecting because a lot of these guys like Dyson Daniels, they have shot up boards just because of the ability to do everything and play really good defense.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, if a team is looking for a guy that's just a pure bucket, then Johnny would be a good option.
I just have to acknowledge that you shouted out my boy Christian Braun. So round of applause for Christian Braun.
Yeah, I had to show the respect. I mean, he showed out when it mattered most. I think he is a player that could still get better. He plays great defense right now. He scores the ball from pretty much all 3 levels. I don't know.
Yeah.
As of recording this now, it's been about 4 days since the national championship, and Branden is still riding that high, and you know what? I respect you.
Wait,
for
I got to interject again. I'm looking at Tankathon. Ochai Agbaji is 14th. Round of applause for Ochai Agbaji. All right.
But yeah, just to recap on Johnny, player with really great, highlights on the year at Purdue, turned the ball over at half court, somehow got back on defense one-on-one and blocked a shot. That's the highlights you're getting with him, but then the lowlights, obviously, we've all seen him this year. So Johnny Davis going to be needing some good coaching when he comes into the NBA, but still a very nice-looking prospect for a team to get their hands on.
Round of applause for Johnny Davis.
Trivia.
And as we lead off from the prospect breakdown, here comes our trivia section where these 3 gentlemen now with our guest today in Chife Jaeger are going to go head-to-head against each other in 3 questions I have today. As we know, last week Chife swept this
Clean sweep
group. But we'll see if you can do it again, because I think last week was pretty much all March Madness questions, and this week is going to be NBA questions. So for the first question, you are going to pick a number, and the person closest to the number is going to get the answer or the question right. So it's completely random, out of the blue. How many rounds did the 1960 NBA draft have?
5.
20.
6.
And the answer is 21. They had 21 rounds in the NBA draft in 1960, which is a ton. Branden got that one. And yeah, I just think it's crazy. I wanted to bring that stat up just because it's so out there. They were picking hundreds of players and like barely any of them would ever turn out. Just something crazy.
Round of applause for me.
These guys over here look a little
Pressed.
upset, a little pressed. But there's 2 more questions left, so don't worry yet. As we get into the next one, you're going to have to guess a number, and it will be in a range, so you'll get to pick here. But how many players out of the 2016 lottery draft have been traded? This is out of 14. How many of them have been traded? You just start spitballing whenever. I'll take the numbers.
7.
I'm going to say a cool 10.
14.
That's a bold answer.
Uh-oh. And, well, I'll give you the answer here and we'll figure out who won it here. But the answer is actually 12. 12 of 14. But one of you guys, or Brandon guessed 14, or wait, no.
Jake.
No, Jake guessed 14 and Brandon guessed 10, and that's right in the middle of the two.
You guys could just give it to me. That's fine.
If me and Brandon tie, then we'll just go to a tiebreaker.
Yeah, you know what? If they tie, we'll go to a tiebreaker. I'll give them both a point. Or well.
Yeah, Brandon's got 2, and then I would have 1.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yep. Yeah. That works. We like to wing it here on the League Bound podcast. And for the last question here, which NBA team has had the longest lottery pick dry spell? This was since 1997. 1997. A long time
As in,
ago.
like, they just haven't been in the lottery.
They have not had a lottery pick. They have not gotten to pick a player in the lottery since 1997. Okay. That is a long time.
The Celtics.
All right.
I'm giving this some thought. Jake can go before me.
Wow. It's a tough question. I know you guys have teams, and then you're asking your head, have they had any recent picks? And then you think of one, you're like, oh shoot, I got to think of another one.
Bro, I'm literally thinking of teams that I'm like, no way they've had a pick in the lottery, and then I'm just like, literally 2 years ago they had one, like wherever, like 4.
I just find it unbelievable that it's been since 1997. So
have they like traded their lottery pick away, or they just haven't been in the lottery?
I don't know. I don't know. They've probably traded it away before, but
this is hard.
I was going to give a hint, but Chife already answered, so I can't.
Yeah, no hints.
I think I know. I'm gonna say.
Are you looking stuff up?
No,
I see your eyes on you.
I'm looking at Tankathon.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going through the. But I'd have to say.
You're going through the teams?
Yeah.
I won't do that.
Oh, you saying I'm a Mickey Mouse winner? Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm gonna say the Nets.
Okay.
Nuts.
Jake, you got to answer this. You're the final person here.
Look at the roster.
Hey.
I'm looking at NBA Home.
Okay, so since
this man over here didn't look at a single screen.
So if I get this one, I just win.
Chife didn't look at a single screen.
I already know you got it wrong.
Yeah.
Nah.
Tatum.
Was Tatum a lottery pick?
Yes.
Yeah, he was like second.
How do this? The Spurs?
No, they took Devin Vassell.
It doesn't even sound possible.
It didn't sound possible to me
Spurs
either.
have had multiple.
Dude, I'm looking at these 30 teams, and I'm like, I think every single one of these teams have done it. Let me guess the Clippers. I honestly can't think of one off the top of my head.
That might be a good one.
Ladies and gentlemen, you guys all got this wrong.
Dang.
The answer was actually the Spurs, which
I was about to say the
False.
Spurs.
But that's false.
That is not true.
see.
Right after I said Celtics, I said I thought maybe it's a
past
Spurs.
But that's
Are you
false
probably
because
should've
you
done
can
that
look at the last 2 years. Bro, why does this happen every pod? Like,
Because I don't do enough research, okay? I don't have the time to look at literally what, that's 22
Devin Vassell at
years
11
of draft picks?
in 2020.
Who in 2020?
Devin Vassell from Florida State.
And they had one last year too.
What pick was that?
2020 at pick 11. Joshua Primo at 12, 2021.
Yep.
I'm getting screwed over by websites, man. I swear to God.
Getting cooked.
Well, I don't even know who would be the second person to that then, so.
Hey, I'm looking through some recent drafts. I ain't seen the Clippers in this top 14, bruh. Where are they? Oh, never mind.
I wonder if it's written
2018.
here.
2018, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. How could I forget?
I apologize to the fans at home. I did completely butcher that.
Does that just mean I win?
I believe so.
I believe it just means Brandon took the win with his 2 answers.
Can I just say? No, I'm not going to be toxic. Yes, I am. Round of applause to me.
Shout out Branden. He's been taking nothing but dubs this week.
I just want to make a public shout out because my boy back home has been talking some trash, but he won't come up here and get on this pod.
Get up here. Who is it?
Raymond. Yeah,
Raymond.
You know who you are. You've been talking all this trash. Next episode, come up here. I'm telling you, come up and get on this pod just to do the trivia. He keeps on saying he'd run me and Jake, but he keeps dodging the smoke. So, yeah.
We'll see him around.
I'll see you outside. You know what I'm saying?
And with that, I think that's all the time we have for today. As you've been listening to the League Bound podcast. As for prospect breakdowns, we're pretty much getting through all the lottery picks. So we're going to start looking into prospect breaking down some picks outside of the first round and see if we can land a couple of interviews, talk to some future potential players possibly if they decide that this show is worthy. And how about that, Jake?
Yeah, I believe the show is worthy. Anyone who we ask, I think they should definitely hop on. But that's going to wrap it up for episode 10. Thank you guys for listening. You can follow us all on social media. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Jacob Schrantz.
You can follow me on Twitter at New Year's Jaeger.
You can follow me on the Instagram at Branden.Blue with 2 E's.
And you can follow me at Broderick Wilken on Twitter and at Broderick Wilken on Instagram. Also Broderick Wilken on YouTube. And don't forget about our podcast is on YouTube and Spotify. On YouTube, that's League Bound, and on Spotify, that's League Bound. Like, subscribe, we appreciate it. It helps us a ton. Also, rate on 5 stars. That is a feature now on Spotify. It was added, I think, about a month and a half ago. And we'd also like to thank Chife Jaeger for coming on the podcast. We appreciate it.
It's all love.
We appreciate all your voice lines for our transitions. They really help the podcast have a little bit of flavor, a little bit of personality.
Yeah, thank you, Chife, for coming on. Thank you for letting me run you in trivia. Thank you for giving your insight on Johnny Davis. I really liked having you on the episode today.
I appreciate it.
Gracias, senor.
De nada.
Yeah, I think that does it for the podcast. We will see you in the next one. Have a great one.
Y'all see Anthony Edwards had 49, 6, and 8?
Y'all see me about to wreck this pizza after this?
Dang. Bro, y'all see
You're
this?
getting a pizza?
I am.
From where?
Pizza?
Dang, I might have to cop.
Dang.
No problem.